welcome to the Humans of Sales podcast, where we talk to the smooth talkers and the deal makers. We're here to share some hilarious and sometimes ridiculous stories of the humans who can sell anything to anyone. So get ready to buckle up and let the sales pitch begin. So in this episode, I have Bala with me. Hey Bala, thanks for joining in.
Hey Vijay, thanks
Hey.
for having me on the show. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Bala, we just wanted to quickly know about you, as the podcast says, Humans of Sales. We wanted to know you as a human, how did you get into sales? Are you an accidental salesperson, or is it someone you have planned this before and got into sales intentionally? How did this begin?
I think Vijay, honestly, I don't know anyone who's like actually wanted to be in sales. I think 90% of the folks that I've interacted with, worked with, they've stumbled upon right into sales. So is the case with me. In fact, I come from a very, very weird academic background, right? I did my chartered accountancy first. I come from a family of CAs. Ended up doing that. I was in the risk advisory business, into forensic accounting and fraud investigation. So I did that for about 4 years and realized that, hey, this is not my calling, right? And I need to do something different. This is not challenging enough, extremely monotonous. And I know that for the next 40 years of my professional journey, if I continue to do this, I'm going to be doing the same thing for the next 40 years. And that stagnation had hit at its peak. When I was in my 4th year of working, I realized that I got to call it quits. Luckily I found a decent opportunity to do an MBA from Christ University. I got in there into global sales and marketing, and I landed in the US. And while I was studying there, I did some odd jobs. I realized that, hey, I might have a penchant for selling. And I got my first stint of working in direct sales, selling SIM cards, right? T-Mobile SIM cards to
Door to door.
businesses, door to door. So the biggest challenge for me there was an Indian guy selling SIM cards to Americans door to door, right? If somebody can pull this off, I think he should definitely be in sales, right? And that's when I realized that slowly, it was really difficult at the beginning, but then I realized that, hey, I could sell, I could make some money, right? And probably I could make a career out of this. It was a bold move, and that's when I decided that, hey, I can make money, I'm good at this, probably I should take the next step. And that's when from direct sales, I landed a job in a startup in Bangalore. I came back to India, I started a job in Bangalore from scratch with a company called 7 Edge. And I joined as a market research analyst because my sales experience in the US, had no value here in India, right? So I had to start from the beginning, despite having 4.5 years of work experience, right? So I was ready to take that up. I joined within 3 months, I think, of being in that role. I think I got moved into an SDR role, and then I was tasked with building out the outbound and the inbound motion for that company. And I realized that, hey, this is a different ball game, right? It's a different ecosystem that I'm trying to build, and it's so challenging and so rewarding. And I did fairly well there, and then I got an opportunity to join this fantastic company called Esper. I think joined as an outbound SDR prospecting in the US from India, working night shifts like most of the SDRs do. And I did decently well there. One of the first, SDRs to be hired at Esper. Opened up new opportunities, and the company realized that, hey, we need to scale up our operations outside of the US. And that's when I was tasked with building out a team here in APAC. And slowly the team grew bigger and bigger, and we started scaling in terms of revenue, in terms of operations. And I wanted to throw a new challenge to myself. I told the founders, hey, I need something new. Now that we've built a team and it is kind of in a predictable, working in a predictable, way. So he said, hey, channel partnership, here's a new thing that we're looking to, crack and scale. So I was like, I'm up for it. And I took that roll up, and here I am, I'm leading the channel team. That's been my journey.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is super interesting, right? Especially when you said about like these door-to-door sales, and I'm pretty sure that's where you learned about rejections, like getting slammed.
100%.
Doors on your faces.
I was in threat of being sued. So that's the level I've gone to selling. So, right. And in the US, the threat of being sued
What's the
is,
backstory? What's
very
the
serious.
backstory of getting sued?
So, ironically, I ended up knocking the door of an accounting firm, right?
Okay.
An accounting and legal firm, and they had written clearly trespassers prohibited, right?
Whoa.
And no salesmen allowed, right? No solicitors, no solicitation. So, but I still, being the sales guy in me, I went in. I I think we're going to talk later about selling ice to Eskimos, but like kind of sweet talk them, talking about my history with accounting and what I did, and then slowly and slyly put in the fact that, hey, I'm here to sell telecom products, SIM cards for you guys. And then they realized that I was kind of being a little pushy, and because I realized that in terms of my qualification parameters, they ticked every box. They had 200 employees, they had employee-owned phones that they were giving, and they had already partnered with another telecom provider. So they ticked all the boxes. So for me, they were an ideal customer. So I was trying to push really hard. And then at one point, they realized that, hey, if you don't go, I think we're going to sue you. And they called up my boss that, hey, this is what has happened. And boss is like, come back. So yeah, I think that's one experience that I'll never forget in the US. So yeah.
The first
Pretty
experience
interesting.
always counts in sales, right? Like the first deal,
Yeah.
the first rejections.
Yeah, and that's how they always say that you need to develop that kind of a thick skin, right? But it's also important to have thin skin at moments, right? You can't be thick skinned always. You should know when to stop, I think, which is what probably we're going to discuss later, as we go. But yeah, pretty interesting learning.
Perfect. So that's the whole discussion is about, right? Like the topic of discussion. What I was thinking was hey, like selling ice to an Eskimo, like how stupid is that, and also how interesting is that for a salesperson, right? Like, and the moment I thought selling ice to an Eskimo, I thought, okay, hey, like you should talk about it because you've been doing this, door to doors. Selling SIM cards to the US firms and all these things, because we're pretty sure everyone in the world uses a SIM card and they're already using it. And how difficult is it, and what is the process as a human being involved in selling these SIM cards, or like as a topic says, like selling ice to an Eskimo. So what does it mean to you when we say selling an ice to an Eskimo? What strikes your mind?
Yeah, I'll tell you. You mentioned that is it stupid or not? Let me take you back, in history, right? I want to talk, say, 50 years behind and 50 years ahead, right? It's a very famous adage or a phrase, selling ice to Eskimos, which means a person with an innate ability to sell something to someone even when he doesn't want it or need it, right? And that's been pretty true, looking at the after the industrial revolution, right? A lot of consumer products started coming out, right? People were looking at options, people are trying to sell a lot of things, and direct sales became a big part of the way companies sold, right? And it became really important to have a specific set of skill sets which enables a person to persuade, to communicate, to convince someone that, hey, there is a need for this product and you need to get this, right? So it was really important at that point in time that, hey, even if you guys are using so many products, right, it's still something new that we are offering, and these guys used to do direct sales and convince and persuade and whatnot. A lot, big part of it was also sometimes I'd say is deception, right? A lot of these products were masked under different phrases, different jargons to convince people that they need this. So it was an important, call it a spade, right? So it was an important part of the entire selling process, right, at that point in time. Now 50 years later, right, now we are into predominantly like software selling. When we are doing a lot of SaaS sales, it becomes really important that probably this particular skill set of convincing, persuading, pushing with deception is not going to work, right? It's more about opening relationships, being honest, giving them what they need, That's about it. Then pushing them hard to buy. So it's more customer centric, customer driven than product driven, than supply driven, right? That's how it's changed. So the adage used to hold true. It used to be a really good mark for a salesman to be called as a person who was like a who could sell an ice to an Eskimo. It was like a matter of pride. But then now it's kind of shifted, and it's predominantly not in the right sense that people construe that phrase. It's completely evolved now. It's more into hey, are you able to open relationships? Are you able to have conversations? Are you able to find the pain and address that pain? Is what is the modern days sales scenario. So that's how I differentiate and I look at this particular phrase of selling an ice to an Eskimo. Right.
Got it. Yeah. So how I see it is that obviously, like as you said, right, like before 50 years and after 50 years, I think the selling still stays, but the way people sell it has evolved, right? Like, and now we are into
100%.
now we are in a stage where we are thinking them as like, hey, these guys are just like any other humans, just like us, right? Like, so there is something that we need to figure out. Like, these guys are humans. I'm pretty sure they must be using something and they must be happy with it. But what are the chances that they are not happy about it? So that's where this relationship building comes into place. But
100%.
yeah, so getting into that aspect, right? Like, perfect. Now we have realized that these guys are just like any other human beings. What are some challenges do you think or you have faced in your selling process when consider selling it as SIM cards to these firms? Or what are some challenges that you have faced as a human level, right? Like that you have faced as a challenges, and then later you realize that hey, I should have done this way instead of telling them directly that hey, this is what I'm doing or this is what I'm selling.
I'd give you taking the SIM card example, right? Now I'm going to be selling this telecom product to predominantly customers who are already using an existing product, right? A competitor's product. So that's a given, right? Now the biggest challenge for me is resistance to change, right? That objections that hey, I'm good, I'm happy with what I'm having, right? How do I get past that, right? And that's when probably I'd say the skill set of selling an ice to an Eskimo kicks in, right? Hey, so normally typically a conversation goes like, hey, I know that you're happy with what you're using, say X brand, but here's what we have in offer, right? Here's what customers who've used our product, who are in the similar industry, you name drop a few companies who are in the similar industry, which is called as social relevance or social examples, right? Which builds trust in them. But we smooth talk them saying that, hey, this company who is in the similar space has used our product and they were able to save X percentage of their operational costs just because our telecom products are 20-30% cheaper, right? Do you see value in this, Mr. X, right? So what I did here was give them a social. First thing is I acknowledge that, hey, you guys are using a telecom product, good, that's a great thing. Second thing is I try to build social relevance, right? Citing an example where they'd feel comfortable to know that, hey, okay, this guy is sold to this company, okay, I know about this company, they are in a similar space. And then I showed them a benefit of using a product, right? Which builds that desire in them, saying that, hey, I was able to save 20% of operational expenses for them just by using our SIM cards, which are cheaper than the existing ones. Hey, I want to do that, so let me get to know a little bit better. So these are the kind of tricks wherein you awareness, you generate interest with social relevance, and then you create that desire by showing some benefit. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this, the idea. It's called the IDA model, but this is typically what you use and to break the first objection, which is resistance to change because of an existing product.
Ooh, what's that?
Right? That's the number one objection.
What's that? What's IDA model?
So IDA model is, I think, if I'm not wrong, it's in the sales development playbook. It's one of the books that I read where they talk about, the entire process of selling, right? They've broken it down into 4 pieces, right? It's AIDA, IDA, right? You create awareness, right? And this is typically through your outreach to SEOs, through social media campaigns, LinkedIn campaigns, so on and so forth. You build that, recall, that brand recall, right? And second is you talk about creating that interest, right? Interest is all about when you get somebody interested into your product only when you're able to build trust in them, right? And the trust is built by giving that social relevance, the social proof that, hey, these guys have worked with this product and this is the benefit that they've got. Okay, I'm convinced here that, okay, this probably is a product that I might need, right? That's second, which is interest. Then in terms of D, I think is the desire that you try to create, right? The desire kicks in only when you've created that awareness, you've created that interest, right? The desire kicks in is when you are able to show the actual benefit of using that product, right? It's the outcome of using that product that you're able to showcase, right? 20% of operational cost savings, right? That's the benefit that I'm trying to show, and it creates kind of want in them, and probably hey, this is a good thing, I can save 20% of my OPEX using this same product which I'm already been using, right? Creates that desire and intent for them to probably even look at the product, right? And then I go back to A, which is action, right? Which is my CTA, the sell, the kill, right? I is like, hey, how about 20 minutes of your time? I can actually walk you through my product, walk you through, give them a brochure, talk to them about, hey, these are the actual benefits that you get, right? This is the breakdown. I'm talking about telecom products. This is a breakdown of the pricing structure. If it's for 10 units, if it's for 200 units, this is what it looks like. So I go for the kill, go for the close, go for the sale. Right? That typically doesn't happen in SaaS, but like in direct sales and consumer products, this is what it happens. So you follow these 4 steps, right? It's very easy to convince someone, to, if not buy your product, get really interested in your product. Right? So that's the model that I was talking about.
Got it. Like how are you relating that to like at SaaS sales, right? At Esper, like do you think it's something similar selling like a SaaS tool like Esper, or is there some changes that goes into when you're selling SaaS tools?
I think it holds true in every case, right? Whether you're selling a technology, whether you're selling a consumer product, or any product for that matter, it's going to hold true, because you are not going to get someone's attention to be at least interested in your product unless you make an effort to put your product out there, right? And that happens in these 4 stages, right? And I'm not talking about the action, which is the close. That's like the last bit of it, right? But the first 3 steps are really, really important in the process of selling, right? Now, awareness. Now, when I talk about awareness, typically in the SaaS, what I'm talking about is the prospecting bit of it, right? From an SDR standpoint, you do a little bit of research on the persona or on the ICP, on the target customer, right? You do try and understand whether he or she has a particular set of pain points, with respect to your product. Are there any bottlenecks that he might face during the research phase that you would have done, right? Parallelly, the marketing team, right? And this is, I'm talking that marketing and sales, they actually run in parallel, right? In tandem when it comes to, prospecting and SaaS sales together. So parallelly, when the SDR is doing the prospecting bit, right? Doing his research, marketing team is also, running campaigns, right? They are doing some LinkedIn campaigns, ad campaigns, direct mailer campaigns to the same sort of prospects that you are trying to hunt, right? So that it's more like an air cover, for the SDR, right? What they're trying to do is the moment the SDR, even before the SDR picks up the phone and calls, the prospect, says that, hey, this is Bala from Esper.io, right? The moment they hear Esper.io or Bala, right, it builds a recall that, hey, I've been getting these mails, these ads from, I've been seeing for the last few days. That builds that recall, right? That creates that awareness pattern. So that's the first bit of it, right? In SaaS sales. Second is the interest, right? Now imagine the SDR picks up the phone and says, hey, this is Bala from Esper.io. the reason why I'm calling is so on and so forth. Right? And then you go ahead say that, hey, companies in the similar space, Mr. X, have used Esper, and they realized that they were able to save 20% of their operational expenses and deploy X and X amount of fleet, so on so what I'm doing in the interest phase is I'm going to give them a social relevance, right? I'm just covering the idea part. I'm not going to talk about objections here. You'll
Sure.
find a lot of objections in between. It's not an easy conversation, but I'm assuming that the SDR is really good and he's gotten past those objections, those reflex objections, and we've come to the interest phase where he's willing to give you time. I'm talking about interest. You're talking to the fact that here's an example of a company that's used Esper, right? And it's in the same space that you are in, right? That builds interest, right? And third bit is that the same company was able to save 40% of their operational expenses just because they were able to use Esper and they were able to deploy their fleet, using Esper. And, that's the benefit that I'm trying to show, in terms of customer support, operational expenses, customizability. So these kind of benefits that I've thrown at them, saying that, hey, we've worked with a company in a similar space. These are the benefits that we've been able to offer them, right? Now I go for the kill. Is this something that is of value to you? If yes, Mr. X, I'd love to quickly, get on a 15 minutes call to showcase how we've helped this company and how we can help your company and resolve some of the bottlenecks that you might have. Do you think this is of value to you? So that's for the kill. That's the action. So this is how I'd frame the IDA model in typical SaaS environment. And this holds true in any sales environment as well. Direct sales, SaaS sales, doesn't matter.
Got it. Yeah. So talking about the sales perspective, right? Like obviously these SDRs, marketing teams are involved, and they are trying to figure out what this specific ICP can benefit out of this product. I just quickly wanted to take a step back and also discuss about the psychology which goes into doing all these things, and also the psychology of a prospect that you are targeting as an ICP. So there's a lot of steps involved in this, right? Like it goes as an email, they would see as an ad on LinkedIn and all these things. So me as a prospect, I'm getting bombarded by emails, ads. Okay, that's fine because no one really interacts with ads anymore. But as an email which drops into my inboxes and all the other messages which comes to me on LinkedIn and all the cold calls. So what is your take on the psychological aspect of a prospect? Because I'm getting bombarded with a lot of information. So there's only two chances. Like either, as you said, right, either I'll get irritated, just like what happened to you, like from your prospect. I'll get irritated saying that, hey, like I already have a tool in like which is solving this specific problem for me and it's doing good. And like, why am I even getting all these messages? And the other 50%, I might say, hey, this sounds interesting, let me explore further. So these are the ideal aspect of it. But what's your take on it? Like, do you consider these scenarios in place, saying that, hey, okay, end of the day, prospect is a human, we shouldn't bombard them with a lot of information, there's a limit to it? Do you consider those aspects, psychological aspects in this as a process?
I think selling is a science, Vijay, right? And of course, it's an art as well, but more in terms of science that I, construe, selling to be. The reason being, like there are a lot of processes involved, right? A lot of systems that you put in place, but also that you work with a lot of human emotions, right? This is what I've observed, over the years working with a lot of sales folks, is that people with a really high, EQ, right, emotional quotient, typically tend to be better sales people, like better performing sales people, right? So this is what I've seen, and the reason why I'm saying is 90% of the time, right, if you're not able to resonate with the prospect's psyche, right, there's a famous adage in sales that meet the customer in their mind first, right? So if you are not able to connect with them emotionally, right, at that emotional level, then probably you're never going to be able to make that sale, right? So that's what I place a lot of importance on, having that emotional connect. I tell, my SDRs is that now that they've been cold calling so many of these folks for such a long time, right? Now you should have that innate capability in you that when you pick up the phone and you hear that prospect's voice for the first time, you should be able to gauge whether he's going to give you for the next 30 seconds of his time or not, right? So that's the level of capability that I'm trying to build, because it's important, because the tone, right, of the prospect, right, the mood of the prospect, they say that the more you smile over a cold call and call, the better the reception of your cold call, the more time they give, right? And we keep talking about the 7-second hook in sales, right? That if you are not able to connect with the sales folks in the first 7 seconds, you've lost them, right? Of course, that doesn't hold true every time, but most of the time it holds true, because that first 7 seconds is too important for us to gauge whether are we going to be able to emotionally connect with him. Are we able to gauge his interest at the beginning, at the onset itself? That drives the entire conversation for the next 30 seconds to 2 minutes or 5 minutes of the call. That plays a lot of importance on how we are able to crack that call, right? We see a lot of these reflex objections that, hey, not interested, hey, I don't have time, getting into a meeting, right? All of this can be overcome if you're able to gauge that person's psyche at the onset of the call, right? Somebody who's angry, you should be able to gauge that. You should change and tweak your pitch accordingly. So all of this is really important. And like I said, if you're able to meet the customer in his mind, you've crossed 90% of the sales journey, and he's come 90% of the buyer's journey, right? So it's really important that psyche, the gauging of that psyche, that innate capability, of course that comes with experience, but it's important to acknowledge the fact that that is an important trait to have in you as a salesperson. We're talking about selling ice to an Eskimo. It's an important trait that, hey, does this Eskimo need an ice, right? What if he needs ice cubes, right, cut into pieces? What if he needs some salted ice cubes? What if he needs some sweet ice cubes? Gauging all of this through the emotional connecting with that emotion is really important. That's why sales is 90% emotional intelligence gauging. If you're not able to do that, you'll never be able to be a high performing selling individual.
Got it. Yeah. So I started realizing this later, right, in my sales journey. So there was a gap where we thought, okay, process is the first thing, then comes the tool, and then comes the customer. So we had a different priority in place. We thought, okay, tools will help us talk, engage with these customers easily, and then we thought, okay, no, process makes them engage with these customers easily. Now everything has turned down, and now, like, hey, end of the day, these are humans, treat them as humans. So that's where everything comes into place, right?
Yeah. See, I wouldn't undermine the fact that, in fact, process is really important, right? When you're trying to build out the process from scratch for the first time, it is truly important that you have that process and system in place beforehand, right? Because that's what's going to make that entire machine of selling your outbound or inbound predictable. If you don't have that process, and this is what I've learned from my mentors, Daniel and Billy, right? Phenomenal sales development folks, right? That process is key. If you don't have that, then the other bits which come later will never happen, right? So make sure that the process is intact, right? And then you talk about coaching and mentoring your team around the effects of selling, keeping in mind the emotions of the psyche of the buyer, right? So I wouldn't never undermine the importance of process. It's really important. It has to be at the first place, right? But holistically speaking, when it comes to actual selling, right? Yeah, and it has to be at a human level understanding. We're talking about chat GPT and AI taking over sales and so on and so forth. It's never going to happen, because that understanding of human psychology, is still miles away for an AI computing tool to do that, right? So it might happen, it might not happen, but still humans are way ahead in terms of analyzing the human psyche with each other. I think that's an important part of sales. So that's never going to go.
Do you fear of ChatGPT taking up your job in future?
I love using ChatGPT, man. It's made my life so much easier in terms of building email sequences, drafting content, giving me a lot of insightful information. But presently I don't see it taking over the sales job for that matter. I don't know about other engineering and coding jobs, but definitely not in sales. I see it more as an enabler at this point in time, for the sales community. It's a
Got it.
fantastic tool that probably we've just scratched the surface in terms of its usage, but we're a long way to go in terms of what we can do with that tool.
Yeah. I first used ChatGPT to basically write like a 4-liner poem for a prospect just to make them
Nice.
talk. So
Yeah.
that's
Did
the
that work?
experience that you're in. Not really, but like that's a good experiment that you can run, right? So I felt it
Yeah.
was too much, but it was
Yeah.
a good way to start. That's how you learn,
Got
right?
it.
Like that's where you
Yeah.
draw a line between like creating more better connection than just like throwing up a random poem which
True.
talks about their company and your company. So yeah, but it was a
Meet them
fun
in the
experiment.
mind, Vijay. Meet them in the
Yeah,
mind.
yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. So this is basically what we were discussing, right? Like I just wanted to, get into where you draw the line, right? I see there's like persuasive selling where all these people are like going in a different forms, like cold calling, email, and everything. But here's the discussion of topic coming from a human as a prospect, right?
Yeah.
So where do you draw the line between persuasive selling and unethical selling? Why I asked this question is because like I spoke to a lot of other people, right? Like other people who has interacted with sales, not specifically to SaaS sales, but what
Yeah.
I've heard is that people say that hey, sometimes this becomes overwhelming, right? Like they talk a lot. They share a
Yeah.
lot of information. Also, that is also a good part. When I ask them like what they really liked about the salespeople, they say that hey, they give us a lot of information. So I see these days are trying to draw a line between more information that becomes more persuasive and more information as an unethical standpoint. So according to you, like where should someone draw a line saying that hey, this is where I need to stop?
Yeah, I think really good question there. It becomes really important to okay, what your agenda is going to be before you make that call, right? Rather, I'd say what is my role as SDR, as an AE, is that I want to know whether, hey, do I need a customer on board who needs my product, right? Or do I need a customer who just bought the product because I convinced him to buy the product, right? There's a big difference between the both of them, right? You're going to have a wonderful relationship with the farmer where the customer needs, and you've sold the product addressing certain pain points, right? Filling certain bottlenecks that he had, removing those bottlenecks, my bad, that he had. That becomes an easier sale, that you would have seen that the sale process is much more easier there. Now, in comparison to somebody who's just convinced that, hey, okay, he's given me all the social proof, there's a lot of use case, okay, I'm just going to try this product for a while, right? Kind of sale, that becomes a headache after a point. It seldom happens, but it becomes a pain after a certain amount of time. So that's where I made that statement that it becomes really important to know what your agenda is going to be before you make that call. I need a customer for the business, for myself, who is in a position to look at the product, who sees value in it, who sees benefits coming out of this product in the near future, and is willing to pay, right? That's another thing. But the most important point is that product able to address all of my pain points? Is it able to resolve all the bottlenecks that I've had, right? If that's the case, that's the only time that I'm going to make that sale. I'm going to go for that action, right? Else, if I don't see that it ticks all these boxes, I'm not going to convince and push hard someone to go ahead and buy this product, which typically happens more in direct sales, is what I know of. Not much in when it comes to technology sales, right? Because at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of bad blood when you sell things that people don't want to buy, and then you onboard such a customer. It's going to be chaotic for you, right? That being said, when to draw the line, here's how I put it. know what your end goal is, right? And it should be more of a consultative way of selling, right? When it's a consultative way of selling, there is less persuasion, right? There is very less deception. There is addressing their pain points. There is showing actual value of what the product can do for them or the service can do for them, and there is resonance with the buyer, right, as a whole. So when there is resonance, and when all his pain points are being addressed, when there is belief and there is desire in him that says that, okay, these are the benefits that I'm going to get out of using this product, this he's already come 95% of the way. It's just you going and asking, hey, do you need it? And the answer is going to be in the affirmative, that yes, I do need it, right? So instead of drawing a line, what I would say is, have an end goal, and that has to be purely, I'm talking purely from a SaaS sales methodology point of view, is that consultative selling. Sell only if you know that they need your product or service, right? Do not, because it's going to be a waste of time, waste of energy, waste of resources. All of this is going to happen, and then if you're lucky to onboard such a customer, it's going to be chaotic post that. So consultative selling, meet them in the mind, right? I think that is going to be super, super important before you make that action, before you make that sale. Right?
All right. Yeah, that totally makes sense, right? Like, especially onboarding someone who's not ready to use the tool, but bought it just for the sake of buying it because we are talking to them and all these things. End of the day, it affects the company's numbers. It becomes a churn. So there's a lot of chaos happening once we onboard these customers. So I totally aligned with your point.
In fact, when we talk about this point, Vijay, the first thing that comes to my mind is, if you've seen the movie The Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort, and he has got this famous dialogue, "Sell me a pen," right? And there he talks about, even in his Jordan Belfort's podcast, if you listen to, he says that when somebody asks sales guy, "Sell me a pen," normally typically what happens is the guy's like, "Hey, this pen can write upside down, it's made out of gold and diamonds, and it can write in water and shit, whatnot." So that's the Eskimo, the sales guy selling ice to the Eskimo. So that's a bit. But an important point that Jordan Belfort makes is that before when somebody asks you to sell the pen, right, there are a few important questions that you need to ask. First, do you need this pen? Why do you need this pen? What are the benefits that you're going to see out of using this pen, right? Are you willing to pay for this pen, right? If the guy is ready to answer all of these, then the sale has already happened. You already met them in their mind. They need it. You've ticked all the boxes. Sold, right? That's how you sell. That's consultative selling, right? Rather than just bullshitting your way, into selling, convincing and persuading someone to buy that ridiculously talented pen with so many features. It doesn't make sense. So it's more about meeting them in their mind and knowing why they need that product, and then showing them the benefit. And if they need it, go ahead and go for the ask. That's the example that I get, right? And that's a typical way of looking at selling ice to an Eskimo. That's the first example that I get. The other example that I also get is, I don't know if if you've seen this movie Bunty or Bubbly. Have you seen that movie? It's a famous Bollywood movie, and so there's this guy, and it's a real story, by the way. This happened in I think in Madhya Pradesh. This guy, con man, was able to sell the Taj Mahal to foreign tourists.
Oh shit! Okay.
Can you believe that? Right? So selling them something that they don't need, this guy was able to pull that off. Right? That's the level of deception I'm talking about when you're trying to sell ice to an Eskimo. This is like the epitome of what you can sell, right? One of the major wonders of the world you're trying to sell to a foreign tourist. And not just this, he's been able to sell multiple monuments to foreign tourists. And
is it the same guy who sold Eiffel Tower?
No, this guy is specifically from India. He's from India. But it's an insane story of what skill set in selling can do, right? So it's a crazy story that worth talking about.
Got it. Yeah. So I think we're in the end of this podcast. Before we discuss about the other things, just wanted to hear from you, right? Talking about humans of sales. Who's your favorite salesperson? Not specifically people you have known stuffs, but as a community, as sales, right? Who do you think is that you have met is the best salesperson that you
Yeah.
have interacted with, and they were able to they were able to check mark all the boxes that we were discussing about it, like the psychological aspect of it, the IDA process of it. Like, who is that person?
Yeah. See, I'd say I have like I wouldn't say from the community, right? But like the people that I've really worked closely with, right? There are three important individuals that I want to talk about. One is Billy, who was the VP of sales when I joined, and he's no longer with the ISPA, but he was the one who put in the seed that, hey, SaaS sales can be big in APAC as well. Try and build out that team. He was a closer at the end of the day, right? So I've seen examples of him where he's been able to call a prospect. He shouted at him saying, "Why the hell did you call me back? Call me," right? He hung up. This guy called him again. He's like, "Don't you understand? You're not supposed to call on this number," and hung up again. Third time, Billy called him again, right? And he spoke for 7 minutes, convinced him for a meeting, and that deal got qualified. So it's insane, like, the amount of, and even before this happened, like, I was on the live call with him for this, and when the first time he hung up, Billy's like, "I'm going to give this guy multiple calls till he books a meeting with me," right? So this actually, I saw this happen live. He's an amazing, even a prospector as well as a closer. So I think that's one individual that's inspired me a lot. Second is my mentor, Daniel Kretz, who is very well known in the Bay Area and Seattle area for being one of the best sales development leaders out there. So he's been able to coach me, mentor me in terms of the process aspects of sales development, building out teams, building out a predictable revenue model. I think he's inspired me, a lot, and he's given me a lot of freedom to experiment, to fail, to fail fast, learn fast. So I think those two individuals have inspired me a lot in the process of sales. And in terms of understanding people management in sales, which is a very, very critical. This is where, the human intelligence, the human, emotional quotient comes into play. My current, leader, Vishrant, I think I've learned that a lot in terms of how to be a leader, how to be a role model for others, how to inspire others. I think that's really inspiring to, see that in person day in, day out, from a leader like him. So these three individuals have, contributed a lot in terms of, how I've shaped up in this specific field of selling. But that being said, I'd also like to thank my ex CEO of 7Edge, Ashu. I think the first book in sales that I ever read, Predictable Revenue by Aaron Ross, was given by him, and he put that seed in me. So so I think I'd love to thank him as well. So those are some of the people that I want to thank, and I'm inspired from.
Got it. Absolutely. So this was fun. We learned a lot about the different interactions people are doing, right? Especially when it comes to these topics of selling ice to an Eskimo. But I just wanted to wrap it up in this way, right? Saying that humans of sales, when I just say it's not just about like people who's selling it, end of the day, it's about your prospects. So it involves two humans
100%.
interactions. Just
Two
figure
humans,
it out.
for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
It's not a one-way street. It's never a one-way street. So yeah, 100%. It's both ways.
Yeah, I just wanted to put this out. So saying that like people in sales, just consider that the other opposite person as your ICP, but end of the day, they're just human beings. So just be on their shoes. That helps you a lot, right? Like
Meet
figuring
them
out
in
how
their
to
mind.
reach out. Exactly. Awesome. Great. Thanks, Bala. It was really fun hosting you. Thanks for joining the
Thanks,
Humans of
Vijay,
Sales
for having me.
podcast.
Thanks, Vijay. It was a fun conversation. Look forward to many more, and look forward to see Humans of Sale. A lot of interesting folks joining in, in this particular series. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Onwards and upwards, Vijay. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
Let's go.
Thanks, Bala. Thanks for joining in. And guys, so this podcast is live on Spotify, Apple Music, and all the other podcast systems. So feel free to jump in, listen to it, and comment on it. And also don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for listening to the Humans of Sales podcast.